Y minuto 35, la legislatura en Guam is back from recess. Senator Therese, you still have the floor on your other amendment.
Thank you. So I'd like to go now to my amendment on page 11. It's titled SB 197 FA TMT L1 P11, line 1, page 11. Again, it's to delete the entire section, section 13. I'll just wait 1 second for everybody to look at that amendment.
It's uploaded. Thank you, Senator. Please
All right.
proceed.
Again, current law across the board requires all leases over 5 years to be approved by the Guam Legislature. And it doesn't not allow for leases. It says that they are going to get that extra scrutiny through the Guam Legislature. And, that's, in the history of Guam, it's a relatively recent law. And as I said earlier, I think that law has evolved because of abuses in the past, where the government agencies by themselves entered the government of Guam and the people of Guam into long-term leases that were soon to, be concluded that they were just not good deals for the government. And this is just an extra added protection. The bill, I want to remove the section that allows the University of Guam, without any additional scrutiny, to lease up to 30 years without legislative approval in order to, it says, to create public-private partnerships as well as diversify the revenue streams of the government. My understanding about the land of the University of Guam sits on is that a lot of that was donated land. Some of it was granted by the government of Guam for very specific purposes. So that means we took it out of the inventory of the government of Guam, took it away from the government of Guam's, power to borrow, so that the university could use it in its, when it was trying to build these buildings as not just places to put them on, but for that, for the backing, that they needed in order to get that funding. Of course, we've given cash but what I think that, I just don't think that this bill to modernize a charter is the place to say we're going to totally scrap our review of long-term leases. I think, in fact, that, we've seen too many special interest deals, and that we should hold firm on the requirement that we are going to review long-term leases. And as I said earlier on another amendment, that if there is an urgent need for a lease to be done quickly or reviewed by the legislature quickly, I am very sure that the legislature can do that. But, of course, the need has to be shown. And I just, again, I don't think we should ever underestimate the power of the people of Guam to review things. They will always be able to tell us, and we're never going to know what's, like right now, we have no idea what deal it is that we are trying to approve by approving this bill. We're not sure. It's not been told to us. And I just can't understand that. I think that it should be very, very clear exactly what it is that they want. What public-private partnership is it that they want to enter into that they do not want legislative scrutiny over? Again, if we are going to lease long-term, if I'm still a senator at that time, I would like to see what are the impacts on tuition. Are those, going to benefit the students? Are they going to lower the tuition? Are they going to impact general fund, revenues, our own borrowing authority? I'm not even sure about that. That wasn't discussed at the public hearing, as far as I know. This is, I think we've had a very successful, the legislature and the University of Guam and the people of Guam have all worked together all these years. I can't see why we have to depart from this system today, especially if there's no deal pending that needs our immediate review. Why would we give that away, give the people of Guam's ability to review these things away today if it just doesn't seem urgent? It's not going to decrease their tuition tomorrow. It's not going to, we don't know the revenue that it's going to produce. Why not just, let's talk about that. That's all I really want. I want the transparency. And because of our experience with bad deals, I do not want that to happen again. I just, leasing government property is a very big deal. It's one of, I think, one of our few resources here on Guam. We've been in lawsuit after lawsuit over some deals that were made regarding long-term leases, such as the YTK, such as the incinerator lease or license that was supposed to go on for many, many years. So again, I just think it should benefit the University of Guam, and it should benefit students, and it should benefit the people of Guam, and we should go for the win-win-win-win-win situations as much as possible. And less scrutiny and less transparency is not going to get us there. It's going to get us to the opposite. It's going to get us into court. It's going to get us into fiscal challenges. I don't know. And we don't know who's going to be at the university after today. We might love the people that are there today. I worked there. I know many of them, and I have the utmost respect for them. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about individuals. We're talking about entities and the people of Guam and who's going to take care of their interests and who's going to look out for that after we've given the land away with certain parameters. Then that gets changed, and we actually have no say in how that land is used anymore. I just don't think we have to give that up today. And I very much urge my colleagues not to do that. I know that there are other bills lined up to do this, these long-term leases that the legislatures have really stood firm, to try to scrutinize. And so I say we do that. There's no, like on the previous borrowing provisions, there's no borrowing limit. It doesn't say how much they can go into debt. It doesn't give us any parameters at all. And I know that when the legislature approves long-term leases, they almost always have parameters. And this one has none at all. So I think that at the very least, let's do a different bill, separate bill where that's all we talk about. And we come up with the best parameters that's going to be good policy all across the government as to what we're going to do for long-term leases. Not just give that power of the people up today when it's not urgent today. Or if there's an urgent deal, then by all means, let's see it. Let's talk about that right now, as opposed to blanket approval. So I really, again, I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. So it would be to delete the entire section 13 so that the university would be governed under the law that the entire government of Guam is governed under, and that is all leases. You can lease up to 5 years, but if you're going to exceed 5 years, then you must get the scrutiny of the Guam Legislature. Since Masi, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Therese, on the amendment. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone? Senator Castro. Senator Perez?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a quick question for the author of the bill. How did she arrive at 30 years? How was 30 years arrived at?
Okay, I will yield to the author. Senator Shelton?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And this was a time frame that was discussed with the University of Guam as an idea from them based on their interactions with some private investors who they might possibly go into these public-private partnerships with in the future. And so this was the time frame of business that they were open to and seemed comfortable with at the University of Guam.
Senator Paris, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a follow-up question. Is this related to the aquaculture public-private partnership?
Senator Shelton.
Thank you very much. Yes, I don't have the details on the specific plans for the hatchery. What was very much what was highlighted by the University of Guam was really a new potential international dorm project that I spoke about previously, which was their clearest example of a public-private partnership they'd like to enter into, with the timing for a 30-year contract and lease given as an example here.
Senator Ferris.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. I do appreciate that opportunity, but I do rise in support of this amendment. I think that 30 years is a long time. I mean, if you think back, in our history, we have 99-year leases, and oftentimes the terms that were created at the time of the agreement, we find years later, not even nearing the term of the contract, that it was a bad deal. And I think, times change, right? And Guam, our land is one of our most valuable resources. And, we're in this situation where I think we're often caught in this dilemma where, we don't value the land in the way that it should be. I think it's a finite resource. And when you have finite resources and greater demands, the value is going to skyrocket. And I think, really it does open us up to potential abuses as well. Or, just the fact that we don't know what's ahead of us in the future. And I think it's really critical that, we have greater transparency and accountability in the process to ensure that our resources are, we're getting our return on the investment. And, just like what the author of this amendment was saying, that vision of where we can utilize our resources to pay for the tuition. Can you imagine free tuition for all students? And I think if we have more people at the table to look at these deals, to think big. And I've always thought that big things happen in small rooms. And what I mean by that is often things that are not necessarily positive. The community is left out of the benefits. Guam, every one of us should be thriving. We have almost $1 billion revenue stream, at least that was, prior to COVID for sure. That's enough to support every resident on this island. And why aren't we thriving as a community? I think it has a lot to do with the deals that are taking place in these small rooms. And what we need is greater transparency to work for every one of us, to work for every one of our residents of Guam. And I'm not saying I'm not denying EOG these opportunities. It's just that we need more people, more eyes and ears on these deals so that we can think of the future, the sustainability of our people and our island, because land is limited. It's a limited resource, and we need to treat it like that. To permanize something like this in law, I mean, yes, we may think highly of the current members there, the regents there, and they may be they're experts at what they do. But without this transparency and accountability, it holds us to ensure that we're working in the public interest. Because everyone makes mistakes, right? We see that. That's why we have the auditor. They often find that, resources have been abused and misused. And I think that's why we really need this transparency. And, to think about it, 30 years, how many administrations have come and gone? How many legislatures have come and gone? We're talking about deals that outlive the political cycle, which does not privilege sustainability. And if we're thinking about sustainability, we need to tie it to the current context. And so I think I rise in support of this amendment because I believe that we need transparency and accountability to ensure that we can sustain our people on our island. So do us, Masi.
Thank you, Senator Paris. Anyone else on the main amendment? Senator Castro,
On the amendment?
on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to say for the record, I personally am not aware of any deals. I didn't even know about the details of what the prime author mentioned earlier. So I found that to be pretty enlightening. But what I do want to share has nothing to do with those deals. What I want to share is the history, the brief history I've had to serve, and then I want to share my knowledge of these systems. I happen to know a little bit about the university, as many of my colleagues do. I hear and I keep hearing these examples of bad deals. And I get it. One was referenced to one of the ports of entry. I didn't even want to talk about that deal. And then there was another reference to a waste disposal proposal that was before my time, and I don't even want to talk about that deal. And what I do want to talk about are those other good deals that came before us, Madam Speaker, last term and this term. Good deals that were precluded by Guam statute from proliferating, from growing. A good deal like food sovereignty, but because we couldn't lease the property over an extended period of time, they couldn't land the investors. We know these people. They live here. They live in sweat here. They hire locals. They were probably even born here. I'm talking about good Chamorro people, good locals nonetheless. That was one in terms of food sovereignty. That was a good deal that we should have closed the loop on. Then there was another deal, as if deals are bad, another proposal to generate an entire industry that's been discussed since the 70s, Speaker. The 80s, the 90s. The former governor, Carl T.C. Gutierrez, went on record as advocating for this, but maybe because he was the man with the plan at the time, it was a bad deal. I don't know. What I do know is that when I sat down with this proprietor about an extended lease and certain other types of incentives to entice investors to come here, my mind was open. I don't even know this gentleman. I've heard of him. But the point is, because we couldn't land the deal, we couldn't allow that statutory flexibility to grow and have faith in our own people, those two programs will probably never realize their greatest potential as the pro forma had stipulated in writing before us. That was as transparent as we could be. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not aware of any deals, and I just shared two good deals that should have gone through in the past. And so as I exit this body, I want to remind my colleagues of those things that have come before us. And I certainly hope that they open the window. I know some of my colleagues in the room are big proponents of diversifying this economy. But let me move away from the deal. And let me talk about the system. The university is perhaps one of the most convoluted shared governance systems we create for ourselves, and for good reason. I mean, when you're talking about leasing property, and I agree, I don't think there's anything I heard today that I disagree with in terms of identifying with the land. I think we all know where I came from. We're cut from the same cloth practically in terms of our advocacy for this great Chamorro nation. But let me tell you how these ideas come to fruition in a university context. I'm not speaking for the University of Guam. I'm just saying, based on what I've read and based on what I experienced as a college administrator to the north and as a former employee at the university. When you germinate an idea, when you create an idea, it has to come, perhaps, I guess to use that one example of the shrimp or a fishery or a hatchery. Usually those things they're seeded at the college level. You can't just come up with a 30-year idea and then drop it and think it's going to go through. It has to go through this discourse, this discussion between academics and practitioners, between lay people and everybody else in between. So just to paint an example, it goes from the college to probably, and forgive me, it'll show how outdated I am, it goes from the college to perhaps an academic council. And then from there, it goes to the president. And if you look at the shared governance structure, the president of the university, Madam Speaker, he holds no real rank on the board. As a matter of fact, he's what you call an executive secretary. He serves at the pleasure of the board. And so my point would be, after it goes through that entire due diligence, and it is quite convoluted, those discussions don't occur in a vacuum. It is in a small group. You're talking about connecting the strategic plan with the anticipated academic outcomes, with the anticipated, stipulated, articulated financial goals of the institution. You can't just come up and create an idea. It has to go through the due diligence, and those things, quite frankly, almost require an act of Congress. And so when you go through the process, it makes it up, and then they do this we keep hearing this accreditation thing, it's a reality, right? This process of continuous improvement, that's how these things find their way to the strategic plan and ultimately to the institution itself for its final decision by the Board of Regents. So that's how that thing manifests itself. I also want to say for the record, Madam Speaker, my third and final point, sure, I'm going to leave out something important here as I was scribbling down some thoughts. My third and final point on the amendment is, if you look at the original language, which I believe is here, that it attempts to strike out, I find it sufficient, abundantly clear in the existing language that this amendment attempts to strike, the operative phrase, shall hold a public hearing, shall allow 60 days for public comment. In my opinion, that's more than sufficient. And the second part of my final point would be this. I've gone on record, Madam Speaker, I'm sure sometimes to the great chagrin of my own colleague, supporting the recommendation to require a fiscal realignment plan. Now, how's that germane? Because usually you would think about a fiscal realignment plan in the context of cutting and containing costs. No. There's a fiscal realignment plan and a very important component, which is revenue generation, revenue enhancement. In this context of great fiscal fragility, Madam Speaker, you cannot just keep cutting and cutting and cutting and scrutinizing. Allow people the flexibility to grow. And the institution, in my humble opinion, is that basket, that opportunity for the greatest potential for growth. And if the leadership then and the leadership tomorrow drops the ball, well, shame on them, and we'll grow from there. And my final point, my last sentence would be this. As I stated to a college president once before, the great thing about the rule of law, these laws of man, is that man can change them. I mean no offense. I don't mean it to be gender specific. These rules created by ourselves can always be changed. They can be omitted. And with that said, Madam Speaker, I stand in objection to this strike, and I stand with the bill as it currently reads. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the main amendment? Secretary Shelton, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'll be quick about it. The previous speaker did touch on many of the points I wish to talk on in opposition to this amendment. First off, that the University of Guam has been very good. They have been a very good steward of the land, of the resources that are provided to the University of Guam as a land grant institution, all of the donations given to the University of Guam, and we've seen that. We beam with pride every time we hear of the accomplishments and the success of the University of Guam. And in this same bill, we are officially establishing the University of Guam Center for Island Sustainability and allowing the university to become a Sea Grant institution as well. I think further representing our commitment from the University of Guam to ensure sustainability for the future, to ensure that we're meeting the needs of this generation without compromising the needs of the next generation. And this section of the bill will really allow the University of Guam, as the previous speaker said, to grow. And we're not in any way limiting transparency, as we're providing the mechanism in this section for the Board of Regents to conduct public hearings and allow for comment period for 60 days before any decision is finalized. And so I ask my colleagues not to let fear or distress keep us from allowing the University of Guam to flourish in this way. And with that, Madam Speaker, I do stand in opposition to this amendment.
Thank you. Minority Leader, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Like I said, This amendment, if it should pass, will not stop the ability for the University of Guam to move forward on any kind of leases they want in the future or with property. And I'm pretty sure, Madam Speaker, that the University of Guam should not be in the business of leasing government property to start with. It was all given to the University of Guam with never the intent to lease. So I stand in full support of this bill, this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Anyone else on the amendment? If not, Senator Teresa may close.
Thank you. Again, I'm not advocating for this amendment out of fear as much as I am out of experience, out of what the people of Guam have had to go through, out of what we could do, our possibilities. It prevents nothing to require additional scrutiny. And the fact that only some people in the room are aware of the deals that are potential at this time, I don't understand that. That's exactly what I feel like the university should be forthcoming about. What exactly is it? Which part of the property? Is it the property on the cliff that the government of Guam deeded to them not too long ago, within the last 20 years? That's supposed to be conservation area? Is it a marine lab? I think legal recommended to exclude the marine lab because there were restrictions on it. And what are we going to get in return? I just think those are all fair questions for all of the people of Guam to know. And that if we really wanted to take our land and get revenue from it, then let's do that. Let's take certain pieces of property, just like we did with Gita, or the legislature back then did with Gita, give it to Gita and say, take this property and make revenue out of it. Go and lease it. That's your job. We gave this property to the University of Guam and didn't tell them to go and lease it. We said, go and educate the students of Guam and do your best. And we're giving you all these resources and do everything you can for them and for the entire region. And so I'm just saying, if we've got some good deals that are being presented by private partners, then let's see it. You know, that's what we do with all government land. Let's just see it. Let's just talk about it. Let's not hide it. Let's not, you know. If it's just a straight up deal, then it would withstand the scrutiny. And if they were willing to answer the questions, it would withstand the scrutiny. I just think the people of Guam deserve that. They deserve to know. It's not going to hurt the university for the people of Guam to know. It's not going to hurt them to just give additional scrutiny. I can't understand that at all. And if we are going to from now on, you know, give property for certain purposes to agencies, and then give it up because they need revenue, then let's just take the property ourselves, let the people of Guam lease it out to its maximum value, cliff line property, and get revenue. But that's not what we did. That's not what they did. We weren't even involved in that. That was people with vision way before us. They put that property aside for certain purposes. So if we're going to depart from that, I just think, very least, we can just show the people why. Exactly why. Why do we need to agree to 30 years versus 5 years versus 10 years versus, 100 years? Why? What is the magic about the 30 years? The people are so reasonable. If there's an investor, I think we've done this, I've seen all the exceptions. I just think that should be on the table. It should be very open, clear. Even GPA, GWA, they don't borrow without going through the PUC, without making determinations as to how that's going to impact their ratepayers. And that's what I'm saying. If we're going to allow leases, let's put some parameters on them. Let's say what we want from it, Do we want maximum value? Because let's get maximum value then, and let's share it with students or everyone else. Or if we just want, a certain industry to be brought in, we can do that too. It depends what we really want. And, we should be open to different possibilities for different pieces of land. That's what Gita has tried to do for us. Say, this land is good for farming. This one's not at all. This one should be, it's contaminated. Maybe we should just use it for these purposes. Everything, I don't know. But I'm just saying, I don't want to go backwards. I want to go forward in transparency and show the people and talk to them straight up about what we're trying to do with their land. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Therese. On the amendment, there has been an objection. All those in support of Senator Therese Talari amendment, please signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. Senator Therese, you have one more amendment.
It's the same amendment as I tried earlier, so I might just forego that, Madam Speaker. It's one to remove the provision regarding borrowing again. That would allow no limit on borrowing by the University of Guam within 10 years. No limit. It would allow them to decide, whether now it looks like they're going to use their land that we've given them for collateral on borrowing up to any amounts. I don't know if that was, the intent of why the university combined all these different provisions together. What has that got to do with the Center for Island Sustainability, or whether students get retirement, or whether, persons grant recipients, be treated like faculties. All right, so I'm not going to move that amendment right now, Madam Speaker, but I'm just closing on the bill. Those are my sentiments. It's like I want to support some of the good things in this bill. The things, if they're going to help the university, that are very concrete. But those ones where we're, just trying to hide from the people what we're trying to do, I don't want to do that. I would rather be more open. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator Lee, you are recognized.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of Bill 197-35, and I applaud the author for putting in the work with the University of Guam so we can take this leap forward together. Madam Speaker, this measure finally offers solutions to long-standing issues that has kept UOG from being as great as it can be. They always talk about good to great. So this is, withholding them from their potential. As we all know, our university has done so much in the past decade to really grow as a leader in our community, as a leader in our region, and the leader in higher education that it is today. But time and time again, we hear about the financial struggle that continues to grip UOG. Year after year, budget after budget, we try to strike that very careful balance between giving them enough money for operations and also trying to avoid a resulting tuition increase. The former UOG president and now president emeritus, Dr. Robert Underwood, provided testimony that really highlights this unsustainable financial practice, and I quote, 2002 was the last year in which 50% of the money spent by the university was provided by Gov Guam appropriations. In fact, the same amount of dollars has been appropriated to the university since the early 1990s. Under numbers adjusted for inflation, the university should be receiving $50 million in annual appropriations. However, we still expect the university to carry out visionary projects, and it has done so in spite of the challenges. But this is not sustainable, end quote. Madam Speaker, this bill can break the unchanged fiscal cycle. For instance, by allowing UOG to engage in public-private partnerships to build a new student dormitory. UOG loses potential revenue from student housing-related services every semester because it consistently has not enough dorms to house every applicant. This reliable and guaranteed return on investment will help minimize any legislative subsidy and offset these cuts without the need to raise tuition for our students. And as with any capital improvement project, that policy will require financing through a loan or a bond. And Madam Speaker, I too had initial concerns with giving UOG more autonomy over its long-term borrowing decisions. But I am comfortable moving forward with this measure because the change merely grants our university with the same authority to borrow that our power and water utilities have had since 2006. In fact, the language was lifted directly from that past bill. Granting this autonomy does not eliminate this body's authority to exercise oversight into UOG. It doesn't get rid of any public employee's fiduciary responsibilities or legal obligations. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the Board of Regents requires legislative approval. We saw this dynamic at play at the most recent confirmation hearing back in September for Mr. Roland Certeza and Mr. Mike Nahalawa, who both expressed their commitment to seeking solutions to diversify the university's revenue streams, and most importantly, to do so with our students in mind, with our island in mind, with our region in mind. But also key here, as was noted by Dr. Christ, this bill will expand job opportunities for our working students, with language designed to allow UOG to hire more of those attending our university. This will help make college more affordable for our students. It will help relieve some of the burden borne by parents or later down the line with student loan debt. Increasing student employment also has a direct correlation to graduation rates, which help to speed up the turnaround for highly educated applicants to enter our workforce. This pandemic has taken all of us into uncharted territory. Antiquated laws make it harder for our critical agencies to take these new challenges head on and to adapt to this completely new landscape. Madam Speaker and colleagues, Bill 197-35 represents needed reforms that strengthen the foundation that UOG is built upon, and it gives them the tools that will push our university further than it can go today. And that is why I'm supporting this measure. And I ask my colleagues to do the same. Sidu Ismasi.
Buen provecho, Senator Lee. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator,
Point of inquiry, Madam Speaker, if I
state your
may.
point of inquiry.
Madam Speaker, I'm just wondering, would this jeopardize our borrowing capabilities? Because we have a limit on borrowing. Would that also, so to the author, I guess it's just a point of inquiry.
I will yield.
Would this,
I will
jeopardize
yield.
our borrowing?
Senator Shelton, would you like to yield?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I know this will not jeopardize the government of Guam's borrowing abilities. It will not raise the debt ceiling in any way. This exemption for them to borrow under a 10-year period of time to pay back within a 10-year period of time does not obligate our full faith and credit of the government of Guam. It does not.
Thank you. Do you have a point of information, Senator
Yes, I
Therese?
do. I just wanted to point out that the GWA authority for short-term borrowing requires resolution of the board, the governor to approve it, and then there's a whole list of other restrictions that are put on GWA borrowing. So I just want to put that on the record.
Duly noted. Senator Legislative Secretary Shelton, you may close.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And in the bill, we also require for board approval, Board of Regents approval, as well as approval by the governor of Guam. So that is included here within Section 12 of the bill for short-term borrowing. And Madam Speaker, I'd like to offer one last amendment before I close on the bill, if I may. It can be found in the drive as SB 197 FAALS L14P11. And this is simply an enactment clause, effective date. This act shall become effective upon enactment, to be added as section 14 of the bill.
And to allow,
Yes, that's correct, and to allow Legislative Council to make technical changes.
On that amendment, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none? Motion carries. Can you put it down to close, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleagues for the very lively discussion this evening on the bill. And I understand that it is a very comprehensive bill tackling many different issues for the University of Guam under its charter legislation. And so we've done a lot of things in this bill to allow for short-term borrowing, to allow for long-term leasing, to set rules and regs for professional employees, to classify certain student employees, to permanize the Center for Island Sustainability, to make the University of Guam a Sea Grant institution, among other things in the bill. And this is really a leap forward for the University of Guam, the biggest change to the charter in decades. And I thank my colleagues for their support. I'd like to motion to add on as co-sponsors of this bill Senator Will Castro, Senator Mary Torres, Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, Senator Clint Rigel, and you, Madam Speaker, as well.
On that motion, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none? Motion carries. On the motion to place.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move this bill to the voting file.
On that motion, without any objections, seeing or hearing none? Motion carries. Assistant Majority Leader, on a motion to recess till tomorrow at 10.
Maskehulu, I motion that we recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
On that motion, we are in recess.